Ethics, although it's vitally important to the fundraising profession, is probably one of the most underexplored areas in fundraising. There's really hardly anything written about it, and what we do have in fundraising for ethics is what's called applied ethics. We have those in our codes of practice in Britain, in the United States, in other countries. And what that does is it tells you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But what we miss in fundraising is anything that tells us why we shouldn't do those things or we should do those things, and that's called normative ethics.
So normative ethics is concerned with the content of moral decision making.
In the United Kingdom this year, we have seen that the fundraising profession has been required to make some ethical changes, but it doesn't know why it should do them. So what's been happening is we've been making our professional ethics on the hoof, and really we've been doing that probably for 20, 25 years. Some of the ethical decisions and codes that we have are really quite arbitrary. So what I'm talking about is how we examine the ethical problems and try and develop a normative ethical framework so that we know why we have to do the things that we do. So in a fundraising example, for instance, the Code of Practice in the UK says that you shouldn't try to get a donor to switch their donation from a different charity to yours. Why shouldn't you? Charity companies do that all the time. They're always trying to get people to give, to take business away from a competitor to theirs. And if you work for a charity which is actually more efficient at fundraising and more effective in delivering outcomes and impact than a different charity, then it seems that it actually might be unethical if you didn't try to get the donor to switch to your charity, because you're actually delivering more bang for the buck. The problem I think that we have is that at the moment all the ethical protection is focused on the donor. So anything where the donor says, I've been made to feel guilty, I've been put under too much pressure, we're saying, oh right, what we need to do is behave more ethically so we don't put the donor under too much pressure. But that kind of begs the question that it is wrong to put donors under pressure, and most fundraisers will tell you that you have to apply some emotional pressure to get donors to give. And what's wrong with making people feel guilty about not giving? You know, we use other emotions like anger or sadness, and guilt is just another emotion. So we have to, what we're trying to do is really look at the drivers to ethical decision making and put in place a proper moral framework. And it really is something that we just don't have in fundraising at the moment.
I'm only putting this out here so that we now know we don't have to worry about meta-ethics anymore.
The key takeaways I hope that people will come away from this thinking is that ethics is more complex in fundraising than just what it says you can do in the codes of practice. And also that when you're a fundraiser, you don't have just rights and duties to your donors, you have them to the beneficiaries. And that seems obvious, but I think it's something that often gets lost. And if as a fundraiser you're confronted with something that people are telling you is unethical because of how it makes the donors feel, well, it may not be unethical because of how it makes the donors feel. It doesn't mean that donors don't feel like that, it just may not be unethical. And you need to balance what you owe the beneficiary and what you owe the donor. And you may decide that you want to change your practice, but you may decide that you want to carry on with what you're doing and explain what you're doing, but at least you'll be able to explain a lot better than we are able to do at the moment.